Legacy Wave 3 in under 60 minutes, let's go. I can't believe we're here already. Everything we've covered up to this point, this is the last regular wave. Like, after this, I'm only talking about Victory Saber and the exclusives, and that'll be me talking about Legacy shit for the year. So, I guess without much further delay, let's get straight to talking about it with Legacy G1 Bomb Burst in over 60 seconds, let's go. Bomb Burst. So continuing on from what I said about Iguanas in the Wave 1 video, yeah, the idea is very much, I think these guys just fold themselves up and try to look as convincing as possible. Granted, this alt mode is probably more convincing than Iguanas is. It's just a dinky little space thing that looks fun and neat, and, you know, I can't hate on it too much. I don't want to hate on it. You know, as far as these core class figures go, I think they deserve a lot more dignity and respect. Especially the ones that are that character. They're not like a smaller version of a bigger guy like Optimus or Soundwave, but this guy is this small. Yeah, I like it. I like the weapon storage. I like the layout of him. He's fun for what he is. I think it's time we bring down the room a bit and talk about his robot mode because, well, I suppose this has to go downhill sooner or later. His robot mode, his transformation's all, by the way. His robot mode isn't terrible. You know, there's people who, when I did my ranking of 2023 list, because that's when I got him, there are people who said about this guy, oh, he's not that bad. You know, he's all right. You know, he's fine. Don't be so harsh on him. Counterpoint, he's still just not that interesting. His weird little wrench accessory isn't all that great. He's got these arm-mounted blasters that he can move to his backpack and do something with, but I still can't figure out a way to make it look decent. Is that a fault of the figure or a fault of me? It's probably a fault of me, you know. I'm not saying, oh, this guy's shit, I hate him. I'm not going to sit here and defend him and sing his praises when I don't think he's that fun. But then ultimately, as I said just then, he's a core class. I can't really hold him to the same standards as I would every other figure. He looks good in the lineup, albeit he's got an extremely fucking goofy, cursed head. He's probably got the worst head of all these pretender figures. I think he's alright for what he is. Could you do worse? Absolutely. Could you do better? Yes. I don't know. Let's just get to talking about the actual figures now. Legacy G1 Crankcase in over 60 seconds, let's go. I hope you're taking notes, skids, you little f***. This is how you do something a bit more interesting. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that this is the best alt mode imaginable, because I'd be lying. A peak alt mode would obviously be the live action skids, rip, but this one, for all intents and purposes, I'd say is probably the most worthy remold of this figure that you could probably have asked for. Because not only does it give it some new paint applications, it's black and blue and it looks nice, but it's also got extra pieces, it's got the accessories on the back that kind of just bulk everything out. It's just not boring. The grill is detachable, but the grill is also a piece that exists. I just think this one does the job that a little bit better. I'm not going to say a lot better because I don't want to be a fucking liar. Does he do a more accomplished job than Skids? Absolutely. Is his transformation any better? Not really. I'm not going to lie to you about that one. Yeah, that one's, I'm unconvinced so far. Now, of course, I do think this is the better robot mode just because there's a little bit more going on. You know, you don't have the door wing. You've now got a backpack which has got shoulder-mounted rocket launchers. I exaggerate. In there, you've got the chest, which, you know, the grill comes out of there. The shoulders feel better just because they're slightly different. Very much just a surface-level retool of Skids, but it's a more interesting one for it. Accessory-wise, they've already dropped the see-through weapons, so he doesn't come with that weird axe thing that Skids was trying to push, but instead he just comes with this, like, smoked clear plastic gun, which is, I believe, the same tooling as the other one. Like I say, the grill on the chest is removable, and it's got this weird little thing at the end where you can fold it underneath itself, and the grill's a gun. You take that for what it's worth, you take that however suits you. The grill is a gun now, so that's always fun. Talking about the rest of the figure, I like some of the shiny gloss paint used in some of the pieces on the figure. I just like the combination of blue and black. I just think it works better here than it does on Skids, and also the quality is worse. So I don't know if this is already an example of mold degradation. I also don't really care. You can see how much his legs just take absolutely nothing to move. No weight, no friction. I guess it's an example of QC. I guess it's an example of wear and tear. I guess it doesn't really matter. It's just a thing that happens. Still better than Skids. Legacy G1 Dead End in over 60 seconds, let's go. Would you think, for having it in front of you, that this Dead End is actually a retool of Drag Strip? I bet you wouldn't, but it is. And I'll be honest, I kind of like how they did it. The Combiner Wars Dead End figure, without going too much down into the comparison of, well, the Combiner Wars one, that Combiner Wars Dead End figure was probably one of the best molds to come out of Combiner Wars. And this, I really like this. I think the colours are good. I think the detailing is okay. I like the fact of solid windshields. That's always a winner. Yeah, there's some tabbing issues. Yeah, there's some structural issues. There's this running problem with the back of the car where the feet just don't want to tab together. It's just a up of a degree, and it's not even noteworthy. But I know it's been a thing that's plagued this figure for quite some time, so I just want to draw attention to it. The painted stripe stripe up the car is nice as something to break up the design a little bit, especially because they actually continue the stripe all the way to the spoilers. They didn't have to do that. I'm glad they did that. You know, knowing Joe Hasbro, odds are they would have just done it on the bonnet and been like, what, it's fine, don't worry about it, shut up, get out of my house. Yeah, like I say, some tabbing issues, but it's not bad. I was briefly considering talking the transformation for a split second there, but ultimately just going through the motions, it's not really worth it. It's the same as drag strips, but there's a couple of extra steps here and there, you know, just to spice it up, but also out of necessity because it's a slightly different alt mode. A lot of it remains the same. I mean, the robot mode, yeah, talking about the stuff that's different, because a lot of it is just the same. Articulation remains the same. Kibble fairly remains the same, apart from, you know, this one's now got a bit of a backpack, but even then, it's manageable for what it is. It's not, like, egregious. It doesn't get in the way of anything. The head sculpt is quite nice. It does make me laugh whenever I see this head sculpt, because I just imagine the orange mouth plate is functioning the same as a duck beak. You can't even tell me I'm wrong, because just look at it. I don't hate this. I like this. It's probably one of the best bot modes we've had out of the individual Stunticons of this new lineup. I guess that's about it, to be fair. I mean, I think the only other thing worth mentioning is this was the last one for this year. Let's talk about an actual new figure now. Legacy G1, point blank in over 60 seconds, let's go. I f***ed myself over, lads, I'm not going to lie to you. So in saying, oh yeah, look, a new mold, it happened to be this one. Probably the worst figure of the Legacy lineup to date. Is it that bad? Let's just run through it. Getting this shitty weapon storage out of the way, yes, we've got this car. And this car isn't that bad on its own, but the more you look at it, the more you kind of begin to think there's something off about this. Is it the fact that it just seems to be missing pieces? Is it the fact that it just seems to be all tab lines everywhere? I don't know, there's just something about this that just is like a magnet for shit, and I don't know what it is. It's just a fucking, it's a beacon for shit to come out and inadequacy to come out and be like, hey, look, it's okay, we're here now. And I'm like, no, you're not, f off. I don't know, there's just something about it that just doesn't sit right with me, especially compared to like Crankcase, Blitzwing, Dead End, Drag Strip, Elita, even Elita over this one. I don't know what to say. I think it's even stranger because this guy was meant to be like a contemporary of the Trigger Masters or Target Masters or whatever they're called, with crosshairs. I don't know what to tell you. Let's just go for transformation, I guess. Although, there are people who've made the statement that they see this car as being similar to Armada Blur, the potential that this could become a retool of it. I fucking hope not. I'm not gonna lie to you, the transformation's basic. I'm not using that as a point of detraction or a point of criticism, but I am gonna say it's basic to the point of being boring. Alright, let's talk about the elephant in the room and just get him out of the way right fucking now. This is Peacemaker. Peacemaker is Point Blank's Target Master. Here he is in his gun mode, and here he is in his robot mode. Peacemaker is the most abysmal, depressing Target Master accessory I have seen in years. I look at this and question, why did you bother? I would have much rather they just threw in a remold of a previous Siege figure and do it at a Voyager level. It's better than doing this because this is compromising the base figure, which is this fucking guy. What am I supposed to say about this guy that you've probably not heard anyone say before? I did a short about this guy. He was probably, I'm surprised this wasn't my worst figure of 2022. I think the reason he wasn't is because his QC, for all intents and purposes, was alright. It's just the design is just so abysmal. I am not someone who likes to try and dog on the designers for XYZ. I do think they do put in a genuine amount of effort, and I do think there is some genuine talent to be found in some of these figures and some of these designs. In some of the figures and designs of this wave alone, this is definitely the lowest point of Legacy in terms of original figures. Yeah, Wave 1 was a bit of a misfire, but for the most part, all of them were okay. This one is just bad. He looks awkward. He feels unfinished and cheap. Saving graces, I like the head sculpt. The paint applications are nice. That's it. That's all I can really say about this. The rest of it is just so underwhelming. It's not the one. The leg posability is very nice. That's it. His shoulders and arms are just so naff. The lack of a bicep swivel, no wrists, the shoulders being the way they are. If I'm allowed an opportunity to be over dramatic about a toy, I think I'm going to cash it in on this one. I just think this is the weakest figure they've released so far in this new line. I would much rather they tried again and this time just did it without the Target Master, because if that's what it takes for them to include the Target Master, it's not fucking worth it. Okay, let's talk about another figure because this one's just too depressing. Legacy G1 Skullgrin in over 60 seconds, let's go. I feel like this one should be more maligned than what Point Blank is, because this is a weird, half-finished, half-baked pretender tank There's some questionable design choices, such as the tank treads only cover half the figure, and there's not really anything particularly stable about it. But I will say one thing for the tank. The turret is fully articulated. It can spin 360, it can rotate up to what, roughly 90 degrees? It's a solid tank with a solid turret. The color scheme's nice. The weapon storage, not the best, but it makes sense for what they're going for. And if you're not happy about it, you can always plug the sword guns, the bayonet things, whatever the f you want to call them, into the barrels, assuming that they hold up. And yeah, you've now got extra firepower. Okay, cool. Let's talk about the good shit on this guy. I must say, for this guy just being another one of the pretenders, because I think this is the first deluxe one, the transformation's a little bit more involved. I'm not going to say, oh, it's complicated or anything like that. That's bullshit. But like, especially with the treads, specifically with the treads, there's so much more to it. You know, there's layers and a lot of moving parts, lining stuff up, getting stuff in the correct place, especially with those treads. Don't mind me while I just knock the microphone in recording. I like this. This is fun. You know, there's a little bit going on, but there's not too much going on. There's not too many fiddly parts. It's just, you get everything in the right place and it all just goes as smooth as anything from there. I particularly like the chest, how you have to pull the chest out, pull the head through, and then just close it all up and make it tight and tidy. A couple of little attention to detail things, such as the antlers at the back, I guess, and the tail forming out of the turret. Good shit. And then you get Skullgrin into his robot mode, and honestly, this guy has no right to be as fun as what he is. This is where I could tell, like, the designers have a bit of fun, and the designers get a bit inventive. Because G1 Skullgrin, what can you do with him? Oh, just make him a bit shit. Nah, they didn't. They made him a little bit peak. You know, he's got articulation in all the good ways. I think the weakest thing about this guy is the lack of a wrist, but it's not necessary, especially because you've got so many different options with the weapons. You can hold them as a sword. You can hold them as a gun. My personal favourite is to undersling him. He's got underslung bayonet cannons. The head sculpt is along the same vein as Iguanus, where it's this weird animal-looking head, and it's just fucked. And it's not as goofy looking as Bomb Bursts. Sorry, Bomb Burst. The burgundy comes out a lot more in force. The grey works as a nice counterbalance with the highlights of whites throughout. I like this little weird crotch detailing of a skull. I assume it's meant to look like a belt buckle, but he doesn't wear a belt, so it's just crotch detailing of a skull. F it. What can I say about Skullgrin? I think I summed it up. He has no right to be as good as what he is, and I think that's all you really need to know about this figure of Skullgrin. This should have been the worst of the wave, and it turns out he's probably the best. Of the deluxes, that is. Legacy Beast Wars Inferno in over 60 seconds, let's go. I was mixed on this when I first got it. I didn't know quite what to make of him. You know, I thought he was a bit cartoony, a bit goofy. I wasn't particularly the one. I'm not the biggest fan of the weapon storage either. But as time's gone on, I've come to appreciate this ant mode. But I think it's just, there's part of me that's just kind of a bit of a sucker for these insect modes. I see Predacons and I think of insects. I know the G1 version and the Prime versions and all that shit aren't that. I don't care. I think there's something about them being insects where I'm like, it just works. Talking about this ant mode, the detailing's okay, the paint applications are fine for what they are. There's not too many of them going on. I will admit I can't seem to get this head to stay closed. I don't know if I've just not transformed it correctly. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't spend much time in this mode. I will say as well, the articulation of the legs is very, very to the point. They're more for display than they are for any sort of actual articulation. Is what it is. I can imagine if you're trying to animate or pose, that could be really fucking annoying, but like, yeah. It's not as good as what we got for Tarantulas and Black Arachnia, but it's fine. Let's move past it. Talking about how I didn't like this at first, and it's kind of grown on me over the years. The robot mode is especially come to mind when I think about that. The legs feel very big. The arms feel very small. The ant mode kibble is very keen to get in the way. Thorax just exists, and there's not really much you can do about it. The best bit about this guy by far is the head design, detail, and articulation, where he's able to just fucking scream eternally. And for what it's worth, I like his weapon. The weapon's nothing exceptional, but it's fun. Also, he can turn it into an ass blaster, which is pretty peak, obviously. Yeah, I was very sort of hit and miss on this when I first bought it in the winter of 2022, and then as time went on, I've just grown to like it more and more. And especially with the repaint, I think he looks good. It's nothing exceptional. It's very reliable, I think is a good word. You know what you're getting into. It does what it sets out to do very well. And I think having another Voyager Predacon go along with Megatron and the rest of them is pretty good. And I'm looking forward to talking about another Predacon Megatron. But we've got one little detour that I feel the need to take first. Legacy Armada Starscream in over 60 seconds, let's go. Shitty weapon storage, be damned. Be gone, accessories. God damn this Starscream. So this is going to be a little bit of bias that I want to get out of the way right now. This vehicle mode has always just been cool as f dark and iconic. Now that we got that out of the way, this toy is underwhelming. The jet mode isn't anything terrible in this mode, I'll be honest. It's very solid for what it is. Yeah, I seem to be having a bit of trouble with the nose cone just wanting to just come and go as it pleases. I definitely think this handles it better than it used to. You know, the legs actually tab together. For the most part, the legs stay in place. I like the detailing around the cockpit. I do think the head has this nasty habit of trying to creep up, and I wish it would stop it. It's the Armada Starscream design. You've probably seen this at some point. If you haven't seen this in a Linkin Park AMV, you've seen this in that one video. If you haven't seen it in there, then you grew up with it, and if you didn't, I'm shocked that you haven't. Welcome out from under your rock. As you can see, we're halfway there to living in Fallout. Unfortunately, where my complaints about this figure being underwhelming come into play is in the robot mode. After a fairly straightforward transformation where everything goes exactly where you want it to, you then get to this robot mode, and this robot mode looks really good. Looks really good. The trouble you then start getting into is as you go through the figure, and it's a bit small, and the articulation's a bit limited. Talking about the things I do like in this robot mode, because it's not all bad. I do like how the piece below the shoulder cannons pegs into the back and gives him an actual secure backpack. The shoulder cannons are great. I like how they don't have any sort of spring-loaded gimmick attached to them this time. I say that like this is the first time they haven't, but then again, it depends how you count the Thrilling 30 version. You know, I also like the display options in regards to them if you want to have them drooping down the back, which, yeah, undoes the backpack, but I'm not really bothered too much. I don't have him like that anyway. The head articulation is based in a weird position because the ball joint in the neck is actually towards the back of the head as opposed to being in the middle. In some cases it works, in some cases it doesn't. The shoulders look a bit strange as you articulate the arms up and spread them out. Just looks a bit off. Yeah, you can adjust the arms in from there, but it doesn't really do much, I'll be brutally honest. The lack of a wrist wouldn't really be an issue except for the fact he's meant to be a sword wielder. This is my biggest issue, is when you get a character with a melee weapon and they don't give him a wrist. I would sooner you give them a wrist than give them an ankle in that instant. I would rather take that. That's the concession I would probably be willing to make. Then you get to lower down and his articulation's fairly stock standard stuff, you know. Ankles, very articulated ankles actually. I like the posability this guy possesses. He's definitely an improvement on the Thrilling 31 and the original, as someone who owned the original. Talking about accessories, he comes with this unpainted sword, which is supposed to look like his wing be held in his hand. Does it achieve the effect? I'd be lying if it said it did. He also comes with a Star Saber, which is far too small. And I've seen people say that the Star Saber was intended as one of those repackaged accessories, like I mentioned for Pointblank, except in this case, it was for Hotshot, who came later on. Don't you worry, we'll get to talking about Hotshot. The main thing that I took away from this Starscream is that it meant Armada was back in our shelves. It was back in conversation. It meant, you know, we were actually going to get somewhere with it this time because we were gearing up for whatever they've called it. Fab 40, fantastic. I don't give a f***. I don't give a f*** 40, there you go. Because this was the precursor to so much wonderful shit. And for what it is, I don't hate it. It's not perfect. I can't sit here and lie to you and say this is the best thing ever, but can I defend it with a bit of emotional bias and a bit of, you know, I'm willing to give them a shot for it? Absolutely. Besides, it's not even the best figure of this wave. That happens to be Legacy Beast Wars Transmetal 2 Megatron in over 60 seconds. Let's go. This figure has no right being as good as what it is. And I'm not even saying that with any sort of irony or whatever in my voice. This guy's just genuinely fun. This is our first dragon figure in what? 5 years? I want to say maybe 5 years. This guy just hits the ground running as far as a vehicle. As far as an alt mode goes, a beast mode at that goes, this guy just hits the ground running. Compared to the previous Beast Wars Megatron, this is so much more superior in every single way. It feels more stable, but it doesn't feel complex at the same time. The articulation for what this mode is very nice. Detailing, the fact that he's actually got a really good wingspan, and the fact of the wings themselves are pretty good. Apparently the wings are misformed. They should be the other way around. I don't know how true that is. Detailing and paint are just nice and consistent throughout. He does come with an accessory, which is a pillar of fire, which might come out of the mouth. It's very much just the same sort of vein as the pillar of fire that came with the Last Night Megatron. To the point I thought it was the same one. It's not. Okay, if any of you watch and own the original, please let me know in the comments if the transformation between this one and the original is remotely the same. But this transformation is one of those that I think of when I'm like, it's not complicated, but it's not just legs fold out, arms pull out, you have robot. You know, there's so much more going on in this transformation that I just appreciate so much. And it just works really well. It's a nice little change of pace where, you know, you've actually got the obvious shit in the form of, yeah, the legs are the legs and the head is an arm. And then you get into the more nitty gritty of the rotation in the chest and everything like that. And then you get him into robot mode, and don't get me wrong, he has the presentation of a Power Rangers villain, and that's not in any way a complaint or a criticism. It very much works to his advantage. Where the original one is fairly straightforward and has its own little bit of iconography, this one is just like biblically evil in comparison to the original Beast Wars Megatron. Having the alt mode head as a hand, taking it from that trope, it just makes this guy decidedly more sinister. Yeah, the other arm, there isn't really as much going on in the way of interest, in the way of something different, but like for the most part, I love this design, I love this figure. If I'm talking about complaints, I could maybe make the case of it's a shame that the head is limited by the tail sticking out the back of it, but at the same time, it kind of gives me that same aesthetical feeling as the Dr. Chenard Cenobite. There's some degree I like piping going through the top of the head. The face sculpt is just fucking nasty. I like the fact that the wings retain their shape in robot mode. He's different, but in every best possible way. He's solid as anything. And I love it. I love having a Megatron that is very much a league of his own. He's unique. I wish that this is kind of what they decided to base the Last Night Megatron upon, without argument. What a great figure to end a really good line on. And I guess that's probably about it. Originally, I just had some big dog shit speech about how great this line was lined up, but it's a bit too preachy, so bollocks to it. Solid wave, some solid retools, some solid new molds. Granted, a new mold that doesn't work, but I like this wave. I like these waves so far. This is just another one that's good. It's nice to see Armada make an appearance. It's nice to get another Predacon. Some more obscure G1 shit is always nice. Solid wave, except for Pointblank. F*** Pointblank.